Bringing theory and practice. Active Learning Workshop. Welcome to my Active Learning Workshop, an innovative educational initiative designed to engage participants in active learning activities and improve their understanding of the past simple tense through a communicative approach. Long story short, let's start with some of the things that we developed throughout the whole workshop. First of all, the warm-up activities. This workshop begin with our warm-up activities that help the students feeling comfortable and ready to participate. This activity was like an icebreaker, but what was it about? First of all, we focus on two main things. It should be communicative, and also it needs to include somehow some kind of technology. So we use a communicative approach in this case with the following exercises. So we displayed a bunch of activities to the students, as you can see here on the screen. The questions were related about their weekends. So the students were just displaying some of the stories that they did during the weekend, and later on, we will cover some of the aspects that authors talks about. The students had this kind of input just with a lot of activities their partners did, and also a lot of structures with different questions. And this was pretty useful due to the following reasons. We have some perspective on education. First of all, we have the Brunner and the perspective of Perkins. Let's start with Jerome Brunner. So who is him? He's a renowned educational theorist. He has had a profound impact on the field of active learning. His belief in the importance of narrative and storytelling in the learning process is reflected in the workshop, emphasizing the communication process. And that's why I was talking about that activity. It's because we use the storytelling, such as the things that they did, in order to cover this aspect that Brunner talks about. Also, we select Perkins. But who's Perkins? David Perkins, another influential educator, has articulated a vision of teaching as a purposeful process aimed at facilitating meaningful learning experiences. Well, long story short, we are going also to cover Perkins' perspective in a minute that we applied within the class. Let's start with Brunner's. Something that I really like about it's this quote. We are spinners of tales, not tires. Three main things really important: narratives and storytelling, authentic language use, and learner-centered approach. The warmer, it wasn't just designed with the purpose of asking questions to the student like kind of a warm-up, but indeed they were displaying information about their weekend, and their partners were active listeners to develop an activity that we did later on Nearpod. So the students were showing their knowledge through the creation of some narratives that they did during the weekend, as you can check all over here. But something that also they create that came across is this displayed of a board, like a tiny board that we create in the class about the weekend activity that they share with their partners. So we have a communicative approach used all over here. Let's continue with this following section. What's that we understood that part? Let's move forward. Something that we have to point out all over here also is going to be the Perkins perspective. Teaching is arranging a series of encounters designed to make one or more significant changes in knowledge, understanding, skill, or attitude. Let's point out three main things. Purposeful encounters, facilitating learning, and measuring impact. What do we mean with this? First of all, purposeful encounters. This we see as the creation of the activities and experience that are going to be integrated in the student learner's process. Also, we have to see ourselves such as facilitators of this knowledge. Therefore, we have to check the usefulness of the activities that we are going to incorporate within our lessons. And also, we have to measure this impact. Once that we have these purposeful encounters, we also establish our set points such as facilitators. We can measure that impact. Therefore, we can give a better kind of assessment within our classes. We choose to incorporate it within our classes, some kind of formative assessment, but also some, it was a summative assessment. How do we do that? So at the beginning, while listening to some kind of the mistake that the students were doing,
I missed it.
people and two questions. So let's continue. So Karen, what did
You go.
like the ones that we have all over here? Katie, so what did you do? We met and then we went for some ice cream. Okay, so the students make mistakes and then I was just correcting after it. So the active learners were also understanding throughout the mistakes of others. So they start not to be that shy and that barrier just overcome because they understand that to understand another language, it's fine to make mistakes. Let's continue with this following section. What's that we have? And without forgetting, we also have this summative assessment. And something that I really liked was that even though it was the first time with different type of students of different levels, they were able to articulate up to a 66% of accuracy in 20 questions developed to this workshop. Let's continue with another perspective of Perkins that I really like. So, quoting Perkins' perspective, understanding is a celebration of the mind, but teaching often is just a form of minding the celebration. So, what do we mean with this? First of all, let's divide this section in three parts: celebration of learning, mindful teaching, and collaborative learning. Celebration of learning. Something that we can measure right here, and I like this app, Trace Quizzes, is that you can review the questions, you can see the percentage of accuracy, but also you can know who are the people who are doing the best. And they can be assigned such as a reward that are in points that doesn't mean that the student is going to receive something, but it's this gratitude that the student start building throughout the way of just making mistakes and not being afraid of learning from them and applying. So the students just receive like a mark of a great job being done. Once that we understood that part, we can move forward. Mindful teaching. This means that the exercises that we get into our classes needs to be mindful for the students, so they need to be relevant to them. And we display throughout these activities in our class. And collaborative learning, as I explained, this is something that needs to happen in every class. And that's why we create in this Nearpod, like this collaborative board with the integrants that were there. And we share some moments that they have in common. Once that we have that part, finally, we can have this perspective of Perkins understood that, remember, understanding is a celebration of the mind, but teaching is often just a form of minding the celebration. Okay, let's move forward finally with a conclusion and a reflection. Finally, in conclusion, the Active Learning Workshop is a dynamic and innovative workshop that draws inspirations from the educational philosophies of Jerome Bruner's and David Perkins. By embracing Bruner's emphasis on narrative and storytelling, as well as Perkins' vision of teaching as a purposeful process of creating mindful learning encounters. The workshop aims to engage participants in active, communicative, and intellectually stimulating activities focused on the past simple tense. As you reflect on your own teaching practices and approaches to grammar instructions, consider how the insight from Bruner's and Perkins can inform and inspire your work. How can you create learning experiences that celebrate the mind, foster activities that engage your students, and empower your students to become confident and competent language users? By incorporating these principles, you can help your learners not just memorize grammar rules, but truly understand and apply the language in meaningful real-world contexts.